All right, I want to talk to you about why and how we develop problems. I talked about this briefly in another video, but here's the thing. Have you ever heard the term time heals all wounds? That's true for your conscious mind. For your twin brother or your twin sister subconscious mind, it's the opposite. As time progresses, the problem or the emotion, it gets worse. This is the way it works. I'll give you a real life example because I've seen this one like hundreds of times. Let's say somebody calls me and they say, I'm depressed. Okay, so I'll find out when it hits them the worst. In session, we'll target that emotion and I'll have their subconscious mind take them back to where it started. That's called a non-directional regression. Let's say they're 3 years old and they're in a crib and they're calling out for mom and dad. Mom, dad, I need you to come here. And they train their parents. Their parents are fully trained to come running. Until this day, nobody shows up. So at this moment, this child feels the feeling, let's say, of abandonment. They didn't even know that feeling existed in the universe, okay? And here it is. They're abandoned. If that's where it stops, that's fine. But as you go through life, there are subsequent events that emotionally feel the same way. So the first one, in my world, it's called the initial sensitizing event. It's the first event. The very first time you're introduced to abandonment. Then let's say 2 years later something happens, 3 years later something happens, 2 months later, 6 months later, and then 10 years something happens. And then your wife or husband leaves you for somebody else. So you call me and say, I'm depressed. Oh, okay. Well, I know why I'm depressed. Oh, really? Why? Oh, it's because my wife left me. That's not why. That's a subsequent event. And if we just worked on that, they'd feel better, but they wouldn't feel all better. That's not the way our minds work. You have to go back to where it started and clear it away at its foundation, at its source. Think of it like an inverted pyramid made out of blocks. And every block is one time that person felt abandoned. You don't have to go to every one of those blocks. You just have to go to the bottom block and flick that one away, and the whole thing comes crashing down. Okay? I've done this thousands, tens of thousands of times. I know what I'm talking about. I really do. So that's how our minds work. Emotions, as you go through life, they build. Consciously, you don't know it's happening until it gets big enough. Then when that gets big enough, we develop symptoms. Well, for alcoholism, drug addiction, they're drowning their sorrows. They're trying to distract and comfort from those feelings inside. Ever see the shopaholics on TV? I can't stop shopping. I'm $10,000 or $50,000 in debt, but I can't stop. Why? Because when they're engaged in that activity, for a short period of time, they're successfully comforting and distracting from the feelings inside that they don't like. So how we develop problems is the emotion builds over time, and it also reinforces the belief system that we have. That's how we get these problems. Everyone gets them. Sorry to say, but it's true with everyone. And then this explains a lot of things. Midlife crisis, or as you get older, you get sicker. That's true. Well, why? It's not that just physically the body or the cells aren't, reproducing themselves. No, the bigger component is that you've had enough time for these emotions to germinate within you, to grow. And then you get symptoms. A lot of people get physical symptoms, emotional symptoms, behavioral symptoms. That's how we get problems. So it starts with a belief system, what you believe to be true. Like in my other video, I was talking about like my dad would sit me down when I was a little kid, show me the bills. So I learned my belief system was that money's hard to get. It's hard to hold on to. Money is a struggle. That was my old belief system with money. That leads to the second problem, which is negative self-thinking. You know, I'll never have a car like that. I'll never have, you know, a nice home. Blah, 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 you know. Then that leads to emotions. Those aren't good emotions. Emotions dictate behavior. I'll say that again because it's important. Emotions dictate behavior. How you feel is how you act. If you're angry, you're going to yell and scream. The second you remove anger is the second you're not yelling or screaming. If you're overeating, if you're drinking booze, the very second you find out the belief system, the emotions, and neutralize them is the very second you stop drinking, you stop overeating. It's just the way it works. So that's how we develop problems. That's the real deal right there.